amazing. By the way, just for fun, Don Scott is a celebrity. He's in the papers, so don't forget to read the paper today. It's got a beautiful picture of him taking photographs, so it's a great article. Good for you, Don. Let's see, he got his picture in the paper, she wrote a song, I had popcorn. It's all relative, right?
We're all one.
Yeah, we're all one, that's right. Doing it for me. I'll eat popcorn for you, you write songs for me.
Perfect.
Aren't friends wonderful? Aren't friends the greatest? Yeah, they really are. And churches are a great place to meet friends. You know, I'll never forget the first time I walked into a Unity church because I didn't know Unity existed. And here I walked in and everybody was just like me. They talked about the same things I talked about. They read the same books. You know, they weren't crazy. They were just like me, you know. Other places I went, people would look at me like, what are you, crazy, talking about that kind of thing? Reincarnation? Are you serious? You know. And here were like-minded people. What a blessing. And I think the thing that I first said when I walked into Unity Church, and that I hear from other people too, is, I feel like I'm home. I feel like I've found home. Isn't that the way it feels when you find, wherever you find like-minded friends? You know, the whole Unity movement began with Charles and Myrtle Fillmore inviting a few friends over, teaching metaphysical principles, and praying with each other. They believed in the power of prayer because they had both been healed. And as they began to study with others and pray with each other, and people were seeing results from the prayer, they decided they wanted to start a church. That was never their original idea. But the number one reason I am told that people search for a church is to find friendship. Isn't that wonderful? You know, and I kind of equate it to I love fireplaces. Anybody here have a fireplace? Oh, good, maybe you can have me over sometime. But I'm crazy around fireplaces. I won't leave it alone. You know, I have to stoke the fire and move the logs around. But somebody once reminded me that if you put one log in a fireplace, it won't keep burning. You have to put 2 or 3 or 4, and the more logs you have, the greater the fire. And isn't it that way with each other as friends? We support each other. We ignite the spirit in each other and rekindle each other's spirits. Isn't that true? Is that not why we come to church mainly, to find friends? I wish it was for the spiritual message, but no, it's to make connections. Now, Henry O'Dorman once said, and don't ask me who that is, I just happened to find this. He said, what counts most as I look back over the years are not my accomplishments. The funny thing about it all is that the quality and the quantity of those accomplishments are a bit fuzzy and unimportant in my mind, while the friendships remain crystal clear in my memory. Again, you may not remember the message today, but you will remember the friends you connected with and that you talked to today. My 2 closest lifelong friends I met at Unity Village, our headquarters near Kansas City. I'll never forget the first trip I was there. I met both of them. And we all live in different parts of the country. But we have stayed connected ever since the 1980s, since we first met. And we feel like we're soul friends. You know, we have that lifetime after lifetime connection. You know, when you meet some people, you just feel like you've known them forever. And we're there for each other. If they need me or if I need them, we are there. Even though they live miles away. And we only talk on the phone and Skype and see each other once in a while. They accept the best in me, and I accept and see the best in them, and they accept the worst in me, and I accept the worst in them, because I know the worst is simply parts of us that need healing, right? Nothing to judge. Friendships don't judge. It's unconditional love. And in that same vein, even our enemies, believe it or not, on a soul level, our enemies are probably our closest friends. They push our buttons, and our buttons need to be pushed so that we can release and let go of what we're holding on to. They may be the closest friends we have on a soul level. Interesting, isn't it? We can't always see that, though. You know, I love the saying, now I see in the mirror dimly, then I'll see face to face. And until then, we've got our friends to see face to face, to remind us and see the good in us and hold that good even when we can't see it in ourselves. Now, You don't think of Jesus as playing favorites, but even he had 3 best friends, Peter, James, and John. Whenever he did something important, he always took Peter, James, and John with him. Now, people that read the Bible literally can take that literally. They were his best friends, and reading it literally, that's fine. We're not here to argue that. But in unity, we like to go into the metaphysics. What are they in me? There are 3 aspects of me that I take with me whenever I do something important, because Peter represents faith, John represents love, and James represents wisdom. Whenever I do something important, I take those 3 best friends with me. They're friendly thoughts that we take with us. Now, thoughts can either betray us or be friendly toward us. So how do we make our thoughts friendly when they're toxic? And anybody been there? I mean, sometimes you have to discipline them like you do with children. Sometimes you have to tell those thoughts to go home. Have you ever had a friend that you've had to say, go home? It's midnight. I want to get to sleep. Go home. Or shut up. You've been going on and on. Have you ever said that to a friend? And of course, only a true friend can you say that to. Sounds harsh, but we have to do that with our thoughts. And Jesus once said to Peter, I love this, his best friend, and he says to him, get behind me, Satan. Woo! That was Jesus. What did he say that for? But it's an interesting story because Jesus was telling his friends, look, I've got to go to Jerusalem. And I know they're going to arrest me. I know they're going to torture me and they're going to crucify me and I'm going to die. And Peter, his best friend, is horrified. He said, God forbid, don't go there. God forbid that would happen to you. And Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. In other words, I know what I have to do here. I know what I have to do. Support me in that. Don't tell me not to do that. When those inner promptings say, this is what you have to do, we have unfriendly thoughts that say, well, no, you don't. You can't do that. You don't have enough time. You don't know what you're doing. You don't have enough money. Those are those thoughts that betray us, and we just have to say, behind me. You know, thanks for sharing, but just say no. You can't choose your life situations, but you can choose your thoughts that either will be like friends to support you or to be toxic. I mean, some thoughts I have that go through my mind, I wouldn't have lunch with those people. But I invite them into my mind. You're that way. Sometimes those thoughts come up. I wouldn't meet those people for lunch, and yet there they are. Get out of there. Go home. Not here right now. Now, Jesus' 3 best friends helped him during the Transfiguration. That was a story in Scripture where they went up to the mountain, the first happy campers, Jesus and John and Peter and James. They went up to the mountaintop, and he was transfigured. In other words, he was transformed into a being of light, and they saw and witnessed that. The story goes, now Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John and went up to the mountain to pray. Mountain being that higher state of mind that we achieve in prayer and meditation. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Do you see where, in that important moment, he needed faith, he needed love, and he needed wisdom to transform himself into the divine being that he is. And we do the same when we want to transform ourselves from our human thoughts and activities to our divine nature. Wisdom, love, faith. Let's look at the 3 of them individually. Peter represents faith. Friends have faith in us when we don't have faith in ourselves. Have you ever lost faith in yourself? Have you ever had a dark night of the soul when you didn't want to get out of bed in the morning? Who do you call first thing? Not your doctor, you call your best friend, right? They help lift you up. One of the worst things that ever happened to me was when my first baby died after 3 days. Wow, you really know who your friends are. People get so scared, they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, they love you, they just don't know how to handle it. And they would kind of look away when they'd see us or stay away, they didn't know what to say. But our closest friends, our true friends, were there through the whole thing. They knew that it wasn't about what you do or what you say, it was just being there for. And true friends stand by you in faith when you have lost yours. They're right there for you. That's Peter. Let's see James. James, the friendly thought of wisdom. Wisdom is knowing which thought to let in and which thought to act upon. Remember, would you ever want to have a friend who drained you? Would you ever want a friend who was toxic? But we let them in all the time, don't we? Thoughts that we'd never have as friends, we let them in. Wisdom is knowing the difference. And then there's John, the final one. John, that friendly thought of love. What a guy he was. He was the only one in the story that stood by Jesus during the crucifixion. The only friend. The rest of them couldn't handle it, stayed away. But he stood right there. The presence of love is always with us, even in our crucifixion experiences. Anybody ever felt like you've been put on a cross and crucified? You know what that feels like. And you know who your friends are again. I've been divorced twice. I know who my friends are. They didn't say Anne-Marie coulda, woulda, shoulda. What are you doing that again for? Don't you know better? They didn't say that. My true friends supported me. Most of my relatives didn't, but my friends were there. We can't change life situations, but we can choose the friendly thoughts that will support us through any situation. You never know. You never know who that friend is going to be in your life, and you never know what friendly thought is going to come in. I always think of Larry Watson. Michael, I don't know if I told you about Larry Watson, but Larry and I went to high school together, and his name was Watson with a W, and my maiden name was Wyman with a W. So in school, we were always either in front of each other or behind each other because they always did everything in alphabetical order. You know how everything has to be just so. So Larry and I became friends because we were always sitting next to each other. Well, here we are, 9th grade English. I had to make a speech, right? And I had listened to a teacher. I knew how to do this. I had this speech memorized. And she told me all the right gestures and the right voice inflections. And I got up there like a robot, and I gave that talk just perfect. And I sat down thinking I had done such a good job. And Larry turned around, never forget it. He turned around and looked at me, and he said, "That was awful." He said, "You weren't yourself. You just got to be yourself." Oh, it kind of hurt when he said that, but that was the most important lesson I have learned, especially in ministry. I didn't even know I was going to be a minister then. That if you're not authentic, it doesn't ring true. It doesn't ring true. Now, you can say a lot about me, but you can never say I'm not authentic. What you see is what you get, and it's all because of Larry Watson. Some friends save lives. There was, I get the old chicken soup for the soul books, have had them for years. They're kind of schmaltzy, but they're kind of fun. Do you want to hear a story? This is about friends. 2 boys, one of them was named Mark. And Mark was walking home from school one day when he noticed the boy ahead of him had tripped and dropped all his books he was carrying, along with 2 sweaters, a baseball bat, a glove, and a small tape recorder. Mark knelt down and helped the boy pick up the scattered articles. Since they were going the same way, he helped to carry part of the burden. And as they walked, Mark discovered the boy's name was Bill, and that he loved video games, baseball, and history, that he was having a lot of trouble with his other subjects, and that he had just broken up with his girlfriend. They arrived at Bill's home first, and Mark invited him in for Coke and to watch some television. Back then, Coke was a drink, The afternoon passed pleasantly with a few laughs and some shared small talk, and then Mark went home. They continued to see each other around school, had lunch together once or twice, and then they both graduated from junior high school. They ended up in the same high school where they had brief contacts over the years. Finally, the long-awaited senior year came, and 3 weeks before graduation, Bill asked Mark if they could talk. Bill reminded him of the day years ago when they had first met. He said, "Do you ever wonder why I was carrying so many things home that day? You see, I cleaned out my locker because I didn't want to leave a mess for everyone else. I had stored away some of my mother's sleeping pills, and I was going home to commit suicide. But after we spent some time together talking and laughing, I realized that if I would have killed myself, I would have missed that time and so many others that might follow. So you see, Mark, when you picked up my books that day, You did a lot more. You saved my life. Now, usual chicken soup of the soul story. Schmaltzy, it's cute, it touches the heart. But it's so true, and on many levels, we never know. A smile, a hug, a nod. You're doing okay, you're looking good today. Hi, how are you doing? We never know what little gesture is going to save someone that day, and whatever they're going through is going to help them through it. And we do the same with our mental state of mind. Remember, metaphysically, it's all about state of mind. It's all about thoughts held in mind. Your Hope of Glory, a book by Elizabeth Sam Turner. She said, Jesus attained such a high state of consciousness that light shone from him and about him. Have you ever known people that light, they just shine? Transfiguration is always preceded by a change of mind. Our ideas must be lifted from the material, the physical, to the spiritual. But first we need to realize that it is possible for us to be transfigured as well as to understand the law by transfiguration is brought about. It's brought about by statements of truth made by ourselves or others. There's that soul friend again. Prayers, words of praise, songs, jokes, meditations, any statement of truth that exalts the spiritual realms of the mind. Jesus was lifted up by Peter, James, and John. Faith, wisdom, and love, soul friends. Now some friends are on the other side and you can still remain friends with them. In the story of the Transfiguration, after this had all happened, all of a sudden Moses and Elijah showed up. Moses and Elijah were from another generation. They'd been dead for years, but they showed up. Metaphysically, which is how the story really makes sense. Elijah represents, or rather Moses represents the understanding of natural law. And Jesus needed at that moment an inner understanding of the metaphysical law of transformation. He understood that. He had integrated that inside of him, and so there was Moses. And Elijah represented that inner knowing that proclaims itself to the conscious mind, that inner knowing. And they both showed up from the other side. Our friends from the other side or this side are always there for us. And friends are in consciousness, so we can connect with them anytime, no matter who they are or where they are. We are one with each other. We are one with all life. And a fun experiment to do when you go home today, if you've got nothing else to do. Ask a question. And then think of about 7 or 8 people, well, let's say 6 or 7. And then go down and answer the question 7 times from the viewpoint of each person you're thinking of. In other words, I did this one time. I asked a question, and I answered it as if I was Jesus talking. And then I answered it as if it was Norman Vincent Beale. I answered it as if Mahatma Gandhi were speaking to me. And then I went to my sister Irene, I went to my son Brian. You know, I had different people on this side and the other side, people from history. You can talk to anybody, Shirley MacLaine, anybody you want to. And answer each question when you connect with each one in consciousness. It was really a fun experiment because when I got done and reread all the answers, each one sounded exactly like that person and what they would say. Soul friends last forever and are always there with us. Well, I love to talk about my sister Linda, the one that has Down syndrome. You know, she has friends that love her unconditionally, and they've grown up together. They're living in a group home together. Unconditional love from all of them. I once gave Linda a little wall plaque. It had Snoopy and Woodstock on it, and it said, "Friends like you just the way you are." And she had that hanging in her room for a long time. But she knows when she meets someone, she can feel whether they're uncomfortable with her or not. She can feel whether she's being judged for who she is or not. I'll never forget when she met Michael. It was so cute. She looks at Michael and a big grin came, "I know you," and she went up and hugged him. And the whole rest of the day we walked around town and she'd hold his hand. She knew he was someone that wouldn't judge her, someone that accepted her just the way she was. My other sisters were amazed. But she has that inner knowing that prophetic knowing. But the greatest story of Linda and her friends was when my dad died. And we were at the wake, Catholic wake. Have you ever been to a Catholic wake? And the coffin's there, and everybody's sort of standing around very solemn, and nobody knows what to say, and everybody's looking kind of sad, and you just sort of stand around. All of a sudden, Linda and her friends from the group home all entered the room at once. And it was so wonderful. They ran around, they talked about being authentic. They went up to the casket and said, "Gee, what happened? What happened? Oh, I'm so sorry. What? That's awful." And they started hugging us. And one guy especially kept saying, "What happened? Oh, I'm so sorry." And they were hugging everybody. Pretty soon the whole room was laughing and crying, and everybody was hugging and carrying on. It transformed my dad's wake, transformed it. Because Linda and her friends knew what friends were really for. Friends support each other on their spiritual path, do they not? And don't we do that here at Unity? Unity here, we welcome people of all faiths and philosophies. We know there is only one presence, one power, and we are all a part of it. I think the best testimony that can be given for this Unity Center is when people come in and say, "Oh, I'm so glad I found you. I feel so at home." Because that's really what friends are for, isn't it?
And I never thought I'd feel this way. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad I got the chance to say that I do believe I love you. And if I should ever go away, well then close your eyes and try to feel the way we do today. And then if you can remember, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. Oh sure, that's what friends are for. In good times and bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for. Well, you came and opened me, and now there's so much more I see. And so by the way, I thank you. And then all the times when we're apart, well, just close your eyes and know these words are coming from my heart. And then if you can remember, smiling, keep shining, knowing you can always count on me. Oh sure, that's what friends are for. In good times, in bad times, I'll be on your side forevermore. 'Cause that's what friends are for.
Amber, when you get done, everybody just is so quiet because it's so precious. We just want to keep it lasting forever. Beautiful.